So welcome today to Elder Abuse, It's More Than Scams. I'm Patricia Henderson, Outreach and Community Services Manager at Senior Connection Center. The program today is a collaboration by several area agencies on aging throughout the state of Florida. Thank you for joining us today for Elder Abuse, It's More Than Scams. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day was launched June 15th, 2006, and provides an opportunity to raise awareness about the issue of elder abuse. Today, we have several presenters who will inform us on the topics of elder abuse, financial fraud, romance scams, and Medicare fraud. Each speaker will have about 15 minutes, and at the end of the program, we will have time for Q&A. During the presentations, please put your questions in the chat. And now Carson Cooper will introduce our first presenter.
Good morning. My name is Carson Cooper, and I am the program specialist for the Area Agency on Aging for North Florida in Tallahassee. I'm going to introduce you to Adam Hogberg. He is the Regional Program Supervisor for Adult Protective Services. He's worked for Adult Protective Services for 17 years, and he's currently a lead trainer for the Northwest Florida region, and he's been doing that for the last 8 years. So he's got a lot of experience in this realm, and he's going to talk to us today about APS roles and how to report abuse, neglect, and exploitation. So Adam, you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Carson. Like Carson said, my name is Adam Hogberg. I'm the Regional Program Supervisor for APS in the Northwest region of Florida. Been around for quite a while in the APS world, between doing investigations, supervising, and now being a lead trainer and leading specialist in the region. Done quite a few presentations, but I'm happy to be here presenting on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. So thank you for this opportunity. So abuse, we all are aware of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, especially for our seniors and those who are disabled. That is what we cover here with APS. We look into, are they being abused, neglected, exploited, or is this a self-neglect or a person in need of services? We have a lot of different criteria for us to get involved as a department to be able to serve those. They do have to be a vulnerable adult. And to be a vulnerable adult, it has to be somebody who is over the age of 18, and they have to have an impairment to being able to provide for their ADLs, or activities for daily living, or their care and protection due to a mental, long-term physical, developmental disability, any kind of organic or traumatic brain injury. So there has to be that impairment to normal achievement, and they do have to be over the age of 18. Anyone under the age of 18 would be served by our Child Protective Services unit, but we serve in the state of Florida anybody over the age of 18 who meets our definition for being a vulnerable adult. So that is important for us to be able to serve those when we look at everything. As far as reporting abuse, that is where our first step. In the state of Florida, we have a centralized hotline, which is here in Tallahassee, Florida. It is manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They man that through holidays and natural disasters. There's always somebody there. But as you can see on this slide in front of you, there are 4 different ways that you can report that abuse to the hotline here in Florida. The most common is the 1-800-96-ABUSE number. When you call, you will get a counselor who will ask you a series of questions to get and see if there is a reasonable cause to believe this person is a vulnerable adult. Did the abuse, neglect, or exploitation occur in the state of Florida or someplace we do have jurisdiction? And then they will send it out to the investigating unit at that time throughout the state of Florida. So we do have units placed different places. to be able to serve such a wide population. But once you call there, calling, it does take a little while, but you can go online. The online process is pretty seamless, and you can request that somebody call you back when you do report to the abuse hotline. The investigator who gets assigned that investigation will reach out to you unless otherwise you do not want them to reach out to you to make sure that the information that was input is correct. They will maintain a level of confidentiality where we do not identify who the reporter is. We do not identify that to anybody but internal and to law enforcement on special occasions. So we have to keep that very confidential. And if it does get released, there are protocols we look at to make sure that that is not happening. But once that individual is assigned that investigation and they do call a reporter, they're going to ask some follow-up questions. Then they're going to go out and visit with that vulnerable adult and to determine, is this person truly a vulnerable adult? And so that is one of the first things that we do is we go out on site and make sure that person is a vulnerable adult and do they meet the criteria for our services? The next thing they're going to do is look at the person's capacity to consent. Capacity to consent is a very big deal for us, as it is the decision making that somebody would have. Can they make decisions for themselves? Now, we do spend a lot of time when we look at, are they able to make decisions? We do know that people make poor decisions, as we all probably have at some point in our life made a decision we regretted or have made poor decisions. So we do look at that, their decision making. We have an assessment that we do, and it is quite a bit and quite intensive when we start asking these questions and really diving in to what is their decision making. So we will ask them a series of questions. And this is where it becomes very difficult for what we do, is if somebody is able to make their own decisions, whether they're making good decisions or poor decisions, we have to honor those decisions, as we cannot violate their rights. We all receive those rights when we turn 18 and become an adult through the Constitution and law, that we have the right to make our own decisions. So we have to really look at that. And it is sometimes hard for our investigators, as they will see that there is a need, there are things going on with each of these individuals, and that they do need somebody to step in, or they do need assistance, but they're unwilling to accept that. And so that's why that's one of those important things. But when they do lack the capacity to consent, and then we can step in and we can actually go to court and get a court order for court-ordered protective services. It is very hard to do, because we're talking about taking away somebody's rights to make decisions and them no longer being able to make those decisions for themselves. So that is a very difficult process. It is not a very quick process. It normally takes us on an emergency petition to a court to be seen 5 days, excluding nights, weekends, and holidays that may be in between. So it is a little bit of a cumbersome, but it is a good process when it does come down to taking away somebody's rights. So we do have to determine what is their right, what is their decision-making abilities, and then we will look at the allegations, or what is the abuse, neglect, exploitation, or are they self-neglecting in need of services, and how can we assist them? When we talk about abuse, we look at abuse as being, being that incident that would happen, that would be a physical incident. It can be a mental or a verbal altercation that causes that mental anguish. And so we look at those and determine what was going on, what happened there. Did this person intentionally try to harm this person, whether it be physically or verbally? And that we do look at what we call a degree of relationship. So this person has to be within this degree of relationship to the person of a relative, caregiver, or a household member. Anything outside of that would be considered a battery or assault, and we would turn that over to law enforcement. Now for neglect or second party neglect, it can be a failure or omission by the caregiver to provide the necessary services for that individual. And it doesn't have to be, it can be a single incident or repetitive incidents. And we also look at neglect as a failure of a caregiver to protect that person from someone else abusing, neglecting them as well. So we look at a wide variety of things with neglect, and that degree of relationship for that person is a caregiver. Now, the one that is very tricky for us is exploitation. We do not investigate any kind of scams, but we will look at exploitation, and exploitation, that degree of relationship, is someone who stands in a position of trust or confidence, or knows or should know that that person lacks the capacity to consent. So we do see a lot of exploitation with somebody misleading or getting that person to sign over property, because exploitation for us is not just any kind of money, but it's assets or anything of benefit to that individual that we will look at. And it is very difficult when we are looking at exploitation to get people to give us honest information, because a lot of folks, when we get involved, they're very embarrassed that this has come to it, that they've let a child, a grandchild, or that person take advantage of them or neglect them, and they feel like the neglect is their problem. So it is very difficult when our investigators are out there trying to get that. But we do a pretty good job of interviewing and continuing to follow up. We know that we can't fix all situations, but we do try and attempt every manner possible. We do have 45 days to work on these investigations, which is not a lot of time. It is really a quick amount of time when we are in there trying to determine. If we find out that they do need services, we can make service referrals, or we do have a service component to our program that we can turn those individuals over to. They can work with them for a little longer in trying to attain or gather those services that are needed to maintain that person in their home. Because the last thing we want to do is pull them out of their home and place them into an assisted living facility or a nursing facility. That can be very traumatizing to our individuals. All right. And so during this investigation process, you know, they're going to be doing a lot of different things, but we do constantly have staffings, and we are talking about these to best serve our community and our population. And that is about the best description of the investigative process and what we do and who we serve. So I believe I've gotten to my 15 minutes there, or do I got a couple more minutes? I forgot to hit start on my timer.
You have a couple more minutes if you'd like it.
Okay. I know we, with DCF, we have our different offices, and they should be very open to providing these trainings to anyone in the community. If you wish to have more of your staff, or at any time, we are more than glad to come out and provide updated training, go in more depth on each of these subjects. I do know that I will be presenting an even more in-depth presentation at the Florida Aging Conference this year. So we are out there in the community trying to get the word out and spreading how to report abuse, neglect, and exploitation to the Florida Abuse Hotline, and using everything to make it more public and seen, because it is a very underreported thing, whether it be because of embarrassment, or they're being coerced in not reporting it, or folks are not understanding what they're seeing. But we would like to see more attention to that. But we are available to make those presentations to your staff at any time. Just contact the local office in your area, and they can set you up with the person to come out and provide those. All right. Well, thank you guys this morning for letting me present.
Thank you, Adam, for such great information. We are glad you were able to join us today. Our next presenter is Donna Moses. And she is the lead member of Victim Advocate and Risk Management with Suncoast Credit Union, where she has served for over 41 years. Over half her career has been in risk management. In her current role, Donna works closely with law enforcement, the Department of Children and Families, and other agencies to assist and protect senior Suncoast members from financial, mental, and physical exploitation and abuse. Moses has conducted numerous training seminars for staff, Suncoast members, and community organizations in an effort to bring much needed attention to the topic of scams and financial exploitation of our seniors. She collaborates with the marketing and community outreach teams at Suncoast to enhance the credit union's initiatives serving seniors. Donna, thank you for joining us today, and please share with us.
So I'm Donna at Suncoast Credit Union. Yes, I have been at Suncoast 41 years. It's went by really fast. This job that I have now has been since 2014, mainly focuses on our seniors. So I'm going to talk about, what we're seeing as a financial institution. And it's not just Suncoast Credit Union, it's every financial institution nationwide is having these type of issues. And Adam covered a lot of stuff, that kind of rolls over into us also, as far as, does a member have capacity to make decisions? Are they just making bad decisions, right? I think Janet's going to talk to you a little bit about the romance scams. So I'm going to cover right now, and maybe you all have heard, the text messages that you're getting or calls from Amazon, PayPal, Microsoft. Maybe you're getting text messages from your financial institutions or other government agencies that say that some type of immediate action needs to be done. So we have members that are receiving these text messages. They're coming into the branch for whatever. I'm going to give you an example of one. We had a lady that received a call from Amazon, and they advised her there was an issue with her Amazon account. So they needed to look at her account, make sure that she didn't conduct a large charge, and they went over some things with her, and they said, oh, it looks like there's an issue with your financial institution. Who do you bank with? Now, this is coming from our member once she finally admitted to us that she was being scammed, what she was coached to say, right? They said, it looks like there's a problem at your financial institution. They didn't say Suncoast. They didn't say Bank of America. Who do you bank with? I bank at Suncoast Credit Union. What do you mean there's an issue? We're going to need to put you in touch with someone at their IT department, security department, so they can take a look at your online banking. So they pushed her over to somebody else. This is Suncoast Credit Union, security department. Looks like there's an issue with your online banking. Someone at one of the branches is conducting transactions or doing something that they should not be doing, right? They have them log into their online banking. They ask them for their computer name. The whole time the person is trusting that they are talking to actually someone from Suncoast or their financial institution. They at that point tell the victim they need to conduct some transactions on their account to be able to catch the person. Do not say anything to the branch when you go in, because we do not know at this point who it actually is, right? So they come in to conduct a transaction. Now, anybody that we have concerns about like this, we have to first ask, when they get the member into the office, my first question is them, I'm going to say, Patricia, hi, Miss Patricia, how are you today? I said, can you please take your cell phone out and show it to our MA or our manager? The reason we're having to ask you to do that is because we had several cases where the members are coming in with the scammer on the phone, and they don't realize it's a scammer, but the person is saying, let me stay on the phone with you so we can hear everything that's being said and being asked. Do not disclose to the credit union or your financial institution that we're on the phone. So this has happened several times. So that's the first question we have to ask, to make sure there's no one on the phone listening in. And you would be surprised how many people show their phone and there's someone on the phone, and then they wind up hanging up when we try to address them, right? So I had a lady that came in, took out $40,000 to buy a car. The next day she came in to take out $40,000 to buy a car. We got her into an office and talked to her. I spoke to her probably for 20 minutes about scams, finally got to this last example that I'm giving you. And she still was upset with me. None of your business. It's my money. Why are you asking me so many personal questions? I'm going to get a lawyer if you just don't give me my money. But I told her she had to listen to me for a little bit. And when I got to this scam that I'm talking about right now, that's when she finally held her phone up. This was before we were asking the phone question, and she had somebody on the phone, and she still insisted that it was somebody from Suncoast trying to catch somebody within our organization. And when I asked her if she had the $40,000 from the day before, she said she had to put it in a box. She put it in a box, packaged it up, text a copy of her driver's license front and back and her tag, and met someone at a Walmart parking lot that she believed was a courier from the FBI that was going to secure her money until the investigation was over. That's extreme, right, you guys? I mean, just think about it. If we would not have inconvenienced her and talked to her for 15 minutes, right? And I told her, I'm going to note her account, everything that I'm talking to you about. So if you tell me again that you want your money and that you're not being scammed, and we release it to you, you won't be able to come back and say you're scammed. But at least I got through to her. And she did lose the $40,000. The courier, I don't know. Law enforcement looked into it, but the scammers are using valid couriers, UPS, FedEx, the Postal Service, to pick up packages. So the person that picked up the package from her, I don't know if they knew what was in it. They may have just been a courier that said, hey, we need you to pick this package up. Once you get it, go to the post office and mail it to a different address. It's very organized. The thing with the members that we deal with a lot, 8 out of 10 of my cases, you guys, have full capacity. Are they making bad decisions? Absolutely. Are we trying to detour them, offer cashier's check, ask the purpose of the withdrawals? Yes, we are. But we get so much pushback on a lot of them. Now, don't get me wrong. We have refused to send wires for members. We have refused to give members cash, depending on what's going on. But there's that fine line like Adam is talking about. It's their money. And if we refuse to give it to them for whatever the reason is, we could get sued for that. So it's very hard. I love my people at DCF. They are overwhelmed with cases just like we are. We have reported cases in the past, and they do go out and speak to the member. But if the member says, listen, it's my money, I can do whatever I want to with it. Y'all can't tell me what to do. There is nothing that they can do, nor can law enforcement. Sometimes I get a little firm with my members. I'll like, listen, if you continue to participate, you might become a suspect, right? No longer a victim. We're just and I talk to them just like this. We're just trying to help you. Please understand you're being scammed. I give them websites. We give them documents to go to these different websites. I've had cases where I've had law enforcement and Secret Service go out and talk to a member, right? And they still refuse. A lot of times it's the romance scams, what Janet's going to talk to you about. Those are so hard. They're very hard to make somebody believe that this person's not coming from another country to marry them. But the biggest thing is what they're being coached to say, you guys. They're being coached to say the money's for home improvements. I'm helping my children, is for medical reasons. We get a lot of it's none of your business. Quit asking me questions. Recently, again, we've got people now saying we don't trust the banks because the banks are failing. So as a financial institution, we're trying to decide, are they really taking it out for this reason, or are they being scammed based on the activity that's going on? And we have had a lot of people come in and take funds out based on what's going on with the government. They don't trust, the IRS. So they've been taking out money. So trying to, get into that and decide are they being scammed? Are they not? Is very hard for us as a financial institution, especially if a member's not being truthful. But they are being coached, right? And are they making bad decisions? Yes. They are being manipulated and coerced to do things that they normally would not do. And the technology nowadays makes it so easy for our seniors to be scammed. Again, the biggest thing is they're having callers on the phone. So we now have to ask them, do you have somebody on your phone? And we make them physically show it to us. Because I had an 82-year-old member tell me she didn't have anybody on her phone. And then once the conversation was over, she said, I'm so sorry, I was untruthful. I did have somebody on my phone. They told me not to tell you. So they're not lying because they're bad people. They're either fearful, right? Or they're being coached and they really believe that something else is going on. And the texting the driver's license front and back, that is happening with these type of scams. It's happening with the romance scams. I had a gentleman text his driver's license front and back to his online girlfriend who was going to put him on as a beneficiary before she started to travel. So that way, if something happened to her, he would be able to get the inheritance that she was bringing over here. So again, there's so much going on the backside, right? That maybe people are like, why did the credit union do that? Or why did that bank let them take out that much money? You know, it's not that we're not trying, and we are, and we need everybody's help, right? Talk to your family members, talk to your parents, talk to your children, right? There's certain things going on with the younger people also, but the seniors are so trusting. They're trusting, you know, they believe these people. The technology makes it very easy for them. And just recently I had a couple of cases, you all, where a lady kept telling me, listen, I forgot. I don't know what address I was supposed to mail the check to. You know, I'm starting to have some memory issues. Yes, I did take $1,000 out. I spent a little bit on groceries, but I can't remember the rest. You know, I don't know what I did with it. But she came back in 3 days later and told me that you're right. I was being scammed, but they told me to tell you all that I was having memory issues and that I forgot. So now we've got them telling us that. So again, as a financial institution, there's a lot for us to filter through, right? We try to have the conversations. Our frontline staff are asking questions. Purpose of the withdrawal. Do you know the person you're sending the money to? They are asking questions, but we're getting a lot of pushback. But they are being trained to stall a transaction, right? To stall it and don't continue with it. Let somebody take a second look at it. So we're definitely trying the best that we can. It's just, I could talk to you all day about scams. The romance scams are, like I said, the biggest ones. But right now, if you all have received them, the text messages, the calls, the pop-ups on your computers, talk to your family, talk to your friends. Continuously talking about it is going to maybe help people understand, directing them to different websites where they can look at information. You know, but I get the whole, oh yes, I had a lady just this week. She said, oh no, I saw that. I've seen those romance scams. And my friend almost fell for that. She goes, but that's not what's happening to me. I know that this person is coming here. So they have that, you know, I've seen it, but that's not what's happening to me. You can look up Tampa woman loses $700,000 to the grandparent scam. That happened back in November of 2021. Again, I don't know everything that happened on that. Obviously, they're trying to say that there was negligence at the financial institution, and I don't know, but there are notes in there that she said the canned answers, it was for home improvements, right? And her contractors need to be paid in cash. And I actually had that same answer probably about a week or so ago, you know, and I addressed my member. You don't need to pay them that much money in cash, right? Have a paper trail, write a check. And she was so mad at me, you guys. I mean, it's none of your business. It's my money. You have to give us the money. So based on some other things that were going on with her account, we didn't give her all the money that she requested, and her account still is currently under review. But just trying to get somebody to make them understand, and reaching out to family is very hard if they're not joint, because as Adam said, they're embarrassed, they're ashamed, they don't want anybody to know that they fell for the scams, they don't want anybody to know that they've lost the money. So a lot of it does go unreported. I had one lady say, listen, I'm not telling my son. If I tell him, he's going to try to take control of my money, he's going to try to put me in a home. She goes, and he is going to be so angry at me. So she, in full capacity, but she did not want, she said, do not call my son or tell anybody in my family what's happened. Because I always try to say, hey, can we reach out to somebody in your family? Maybe they can help you navigate putting an alert on your credit bureau, kind of let them know what's going on. Sometimes I get them to where they will offer and say, yes, let's do that. And we do it together while they're in the office. But I'm going to tell you, probably 7 out of 10, do not tell anybody. So I try to tell them to share their stories, you know, talk to your family, talk to your friends. You don't have to tell them you lost money, but your neighbor might be going through the same thing. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. You know, I do go to bed every night knowing I can't save everybody, which is very hard. But we do have to try to stop it before the money's gone, because once it's gone, it's so hard to get it back. It really is. You know, every once in a while, we're kind of lucky to get the money back, but most of the time we're not able to do so because it moves quickly and it's victim to victim. You know, my member might send a wire to somebody in North Carolina that she believes is a business partner of her boyfriend or the sweepstakes winnings that she has. That person is a victim thinking they're getting the money from their boyfriend or business partner. They take it and they reroute it out. Bitcoin is huge right now. I got 80-year-old members walking up to Bitcoin machines, feeding money into it, using Cash App, sending money to various peoples. I could talk all day about it, as Patricia knows, you know, but again, just the things that are being coached to say and the things that they are saying and coming in and telling us, it's very hard for us. We have to try to, you know, you got to kind of go around the mulberry bush sometimes and trip them up on some of their answers But frontline, it's very hard for them to do. If you guys are standing in your bank and you're waiting to see a teller, right, or somebody's just taking too long, just kind of keep in mind, they might be talking to somebody about a scam and might be trying to get more information. Maybe that's why it's taking a little bit longer. So you got to always be patient with your financial institutions too. I think I'm at my time frame, aren't I, Patricia?
Donna, thank you so much. And we are grateful to have you as a speaker.
Thank you for having me.
Our next presenter is going to be introduced by Janet Dickinson. Janet?
Hello, everyone. Ken Thomas is an experienced AARP volunteer with rooted community leadership in his hometown of Boca Raton, Florida. Thomas will be leading the efforts of the AARP Florida Executive Council, which helps drive AARP work in the Sunshine State. Ken served as a state president previously in 2014 before being selected to become the first AARP regional volunteer director for the newly constituted mega region, of which Florida is a member. He was awarded AARP's Florida's Andrus Award for Community Service in 2020. He committed more than 3 decades of service to the Federal Aviation Administration, the U.S. Air Force, turning his attention to community volunteerism after his retirement. In 2003, he became a court-appointed advocate for abused and neglected children through the Guardian Ad Litem program. In 2010, he began volunteering with AARP by advocating to protect programs that matter to the age 50 plus, such Social Security and Medicare. Outside of AARP, his volunteer work has included serving as an AARP driver safety instructor, leading the Palm Beach chapter of the League of Women Voters as president, and providing outreach with the Tuskegee Airmen of South Florida, where he received the honorary title of Tuskegee Airman. Thomas is a native of Williamsburg, Virginia, and he's a proud husband to his wife, Delia Stewart Thomas. Ken and Delia will celebrate their 40th anniversary in August. Thomas also takes pride in his 5 children, 10 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ken Thomas.
Wow, thank you very much. If I had known that could count against my 15 minutes, I probably would have shortened that quite a bit, but thank you. Anyway, good morning, everyone. I'm Ken Thomas, and thank you for attending today, because the conversation you've been listening to is just so very important. And I like the flow. It just seems like we're deconstructing it, and now we're getting to how it may surface in older adults' lives. I want to talk to you today about online relationship scams. And next slide, please. And to do that, we're going to cover a couple of quick topics or bullet points. We're going to talk about the scams and how they occur online. You know, lots of people meet folks online looking for love, maybe looking for companionship, just looking for social engagement. And online dating apps are just a great way of meeting people sometimes, but recognize that not everyone that you can meet online is who they say they are. So we're going to talk about how these scams target older adults, and we're going to also look at the red flags that we can point out to you, because what's important to know is that if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. So next slide, please. For many, meeting online is an intentional act. We're looking to engage socially. Oftentimes we're at our most vulnerable when we seek these relationships, but other people meet just to have meet folks for social activities, someone to go out with, to go to events with, just someone to socialize with them. But for today's purposes, I want to talk about and focus on all types of online relationships, Wherever you can meet someone online is what we want to talk about. And next slide, please. If I had time, I would play a couple of games with you, but the point here is to know that 59% thought that online dating was a good way to meet people. So clearly, the opinions about online dating have changed over the years. Let's go to the next slide. The FBI conducted a study of more than 24,000 people, and they've reported being targeted by romance scams in 2021 at a loss of $1 billion plus. And those losses reported in 2021 are more than twice what they were just 5 years earlier. Keep in mind, as Donna sort of pointed out, that many of these scams are never reported. So these numbers are probably on the low side of estimates because many adults don't want anyone to know that they've been victimized, because their children may respond negatively and try to take away their independence. Next slide, please. AARP conducted a survey back in 2019 about online relationships and encounters with scams. And we learned that 27% of adults, US adults, say they have or someone they know has encountered an online relationship scam. Think about that for a second. Now, that's more than a quarter of US adults have been targeted or know someone who's been targeted by some type of online scam. Additionally, 11% of US adults have been victimized by an online relationship scam or know someone who has. Next slide, please. From that survey, we also learned that 17% of those surveyed said they have a friend or a romantic partner whom they have met that's asked for financial assistance in some way. That's a big red flag when they start asking for money online, especially from someone you have never met in person. You've only communicated with them online. And 53% of those reported a negative effect on their physical and emotional health. And that's important to know, because not only after effects of being the victim of a scam, but that vulnerability, those type of life-altering events create vulnerabilities that make us highly more susceptible to these scammers when they call, when they approach us online. And that has been a major cause, and the survey sort of played out, or at least verified, the assumptions that had been made over the years. So how can we protect ourselves? Next slide, please. When you or someone you know engages in an online only relationship, there are several things you can do. One of which is you can check the person's photo. And I don't know if everyone knew this or not, but you can do a reverse image search. In Google, it's reverse image, and Bing, it's called Bing visual search. But you can copy their photo and paste it into the link on the Google or Bing site, and it will show you if that photo has surfaced anywhere else in online dating apps, anywhere else on the web. And the example you see on the screen, you see that the photo used by a particular scammer was actually a model with a career in television and in other places, but obviously not overly exposed, or that photo would have been recognized right away. Also, overly or over the top flirtatious compliments and language often is used in order to win over the affections of their victim. You can also copy and paste some of those phrases that are used in online postings to you to see if that language has also popped up in other online dating locations. So ways to see if there are clues that the person that you're talking to really isn't who they say they are. So we always advise folks to take it slow. Ask the person that you're communicating with online a lot of questions. And the hard part is to be on the lookout for inconsistencies that may reveal that this person that you're talking to is an imposter. Remember that this is an online relationship. Next slide, please. So several warning signs. The scammer wants you to leave the site immediately and use personal email or instant messaging to communicate with you. That is a sign that they want to isolate you, get you off of a public forum so that they can, and one way of thinking about it is having a personal conversation. The other way of thinking about it is isolate you so no one can tell you to be careful and watch out for what you're getting involved in. They profess their love early in the relationship. You know, I believe in love at first sight. I really believe I fell in love with my wife when I first met her, but it doesn't always, I had to meet her. It doesn't always play out online that way, at least not to our benefit. Another claim that shows up is they say they're from the US, but they're traveling abroad on some mission or in the military, but for some purpose that makes it inconvenient for you to meet right away. But they plan to visit, but they keep canceling the events where you all are supposed to meet, or a medical issue or a business setback for some reason causes them to cancel their events, but also turn into requests for money for a variety of reasons, such as I'm stranded in my travels. I had a medical emergency. My hotel bills are due and I was robbed, or my child or a very close relative has a medical emergency. I need financial assistance right away. These are all clues that something is amiss in what we are hearing in our online relationships. Next slide, please. So if you suspect that this could possibly be a scam, then you should, number one, remember to do that reverse image lookup, maybe looking up the language or wording that they use in order to win your affection. Cut off the contact and report the experience to the site where you first met that person. It's really important to, if we identify a scammer, to make sure the owner of the site is made aware so that they can protect other users and not just you. And even if you feel like you really know you've only met someone online, make sure, even if you feel really confident about it, don't send money in any form, whether it's wire transfer, gift cards, crypto, cash, or whatever. An online relationship should not end up with you sending money. And this only is reinforced by what Donna had said just now. At AARP, we offer assistance to our members, but not just our members only, through our Fraud Watch Network helpline. Next slide, please. And that phone number, as well as the website, can be used to report suspected online romance scams. It can offer advice if you feel like this isn't what it seems to be. They can also give you some tips on how to protect yourself. That phone number, as well as the website, is very useful. You can also sign up for the Fraud Watch Network and learn about the scams that are taking place in your locality or in your area. What are the prevailing scams occurring. Romance today, grandparents tomorrow, tech support scams next week. Who knows what's next? But these all pop up and are reported. And also there, they help you with identifying the locations that work your way out of the damage that has been done. So next slide, please. So with all of that in mind, please be careful, because online dating is very common and more people are starting to use that medium to meet folks, to engage socially, and sometimes looking for love. It makes me want to break into song in all the wrong places, but not necessarily so. Please remember the things we talked about to watch out for. Don't respond to requests for money. Be sure to cut yourself off from that person if you find yourself uncomfortable with the words being used or the quick or escalation of the relationship. You go from just meeting today to love, and we have to meet and think about getting married tomorrow. And remember, men as well as women, we may think in our minds that one gender is more susceptible than the other, but statistics show we all lose money. Men and women lose money to these scammers, and they don't care if you're very wealthy or if you're on Social Security, because they will take your Social Security check, and if they want more money, they will ask you to borrow more money. Last slide, please. So be very careful and think of AARP when you are looking for ways to protect yourself from online relationship scams and in its other forms. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ken. That was great information, and we are glad you were able to share with us today. Our next presenter will be introduced by Amy Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Cheryl Harris, but my name is Amy Thomas. I'm with Elder Options, the area agency on aging in the North Central Florida region. So Cheryl is our Shine liaison here at Elder Options, and she manages 3 federally grant-funded programs. One of those is called Shine, which is serving the health insurance needs of elders. She served in this capacity for more than 8 years. However, she's worked in the field a long time, more than 20 years, and has had the blessing of working with senior adults in one form or another her entire adult life. Cheryl loves her job because she's passionate about helping others, and that's exactly what Shine is about, providing free and unbiased education and information regarding Medicare. Another grant that she also manages is the Senior Medicare Patrol. The mission of the Senior Medicare Patrol is to assist Medicare beneficiaries, their families, and caregivers to prevent, detect, and report healthcare fraud, errors, and abuse. So Cheryl's going to talk to us about Medicare fraud today. Cheryl?
Thank you, Amy, and thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this presentation entitled Medicare Fraud and Abuse, How to Prevent, Detect, and Report. Next slide. SHINE is a program of the Florida Department of Elder Affairs. The SHINE program is part of the nationwide State Health Insurance Assistance Program, otherwise known as SHIP. There are SHIP programs in all 50 states and 4 U.S. territories. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs receives annual funding for the SHINE program from the federal SHIP grant. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs vision for all is for all Floridians to live and age well. SHINE's mission is to provide free and unbiased health insurance counseling through a dedicated network of volunteers, empowering Florida seniors to make informed healthcare choices. Next slide. Our disclaimer is that SHINE is a free program, as I've already told you, and we work in conjunction with the local Aging and Disability Resource Center. And there we have trained volunteers to assist with Medicare, Medicaid, and health insurance questions by providing one-on-one counseling and information. Shine services are free, unbiased, and confidential. And I'm always careful about the word free because we are your tax dollars at work. There was a price paid through our tax dollars. And as I tell folks, because we are your tax dollars, please let us work for you. Shine is not affiliated with, nor do we endorse any type of insurance company or product. Next slide. The Department of Elder Affairs administers programs and services for elders through contract agreements with the 11 Area Agency on Aging in Florida. And here you see our graphic of how the state of Florida is divided into those 11 different areas. The centers are independent, not-for-profit organizations responsible for ensuring the availability of services to all elders in Florida. The SHINE program contracts annually with the Aging and Disability Resource Centers to provide counseling services locally. One can connect with the local SHINE program by calling the statewide toll-free number for the Elder Helpline, 1-800-96-ELDER. Lots of information today, but one thing I want you to remember is if you need help with Medicare, please call the 1-800-96-ELDER number to connect with your local SHINE program. Slide. My elevator speech about the role of SHINE and the program is that if your situation touches or interacts with Medicare, then SHINE can help. It is the duty of the SHINE counselor to help Medicare beneficiaries identify, understand, and compare Medicare options, as well as provide benefit and application explanation to qualifying individuals for financial assistance programs that can help with Medicare costs. And finally, through the SMP or Senior Medicare Patrol Grant, SHINE counselors can provide education on Medicare fraud and abuse, including how to prevent oneself from Medicare fraud, how to detect the fraud, and how to report that fraud. Next slide. Last week was the nationwide awareness campaign to make all individuals knowledgeable of the importance of being involved in Medicare fraud prevention. Although it was titled Medicare Fraud Prevention Week, I personally feel that every week and every day should be the opportunity for Medicare fraud prevention. And you see on the right side, it says about SMP or Senior Medicare Patrol. Again, we are here to help Medicare beneficiaries protect, detect, and report Medicare fraud. Next slide, please. We will not take the time today to watch this video. You'll receive the link and additional information in a follow-up email, as well as some of the information may be available in the chat. But I encourage you to watch this 3-minute clip. It provides, in my opinion, a great overview of how the Department of Health and Human Services the Office of Inspector General, their role in with Medicare fraud and how it occurs to folks without them even understanding how medical identity theft greatly impacts Medicare benefits. Next slide, please. You may be wondering, why should I care about Medicare fraud? If Medicare paid for it, what's the big deal? Well, Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse impacts absolutely everyone. Each year, Medicare loses billions, and that is B as in boy, billions of taxpayer dollars to improper claims. This puts the Medicare Trust Fund at risk for everyone and affects the future of the Medicare program as a whole. This can result in higher premiums, less money for needed benefits, and the quality of treatment that one receives now as well as in the future. Next slide, please. Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse can also cause serious personal consequences for beneficiaries, such as medical identity theft, negative health impacts, and personal financial losses. So let's explore that a little more. Medical identity theft occurs when a beneficiary's Medicare number is misused, either by a provider, a supplier, or by someone posing as the real beneficiary in order to receive medical care. Such Medicare numbers are considered compromised, and your SHINE or SMP counselor can work with the Medicare beneficiary to get that Medicare number changed. Health impacts. Receiving health care from a fraudulent provider can mean the quality of care is poor, the intervention was not medically necessary, or worse, the intervention is actually harmful. A beneficiary may later receive improper medical treatment from a legitimate provider as a result of inaccurate medical records. Additionally, because of inaccurate or fraudulent claims to Medicare, beneficiaries may be denied needed Medicare benefits in the future. We see this particularly when it comes to if someone has been a victim to genetic testing, and there are all types of genetic testing. And genetic testing is a real thing when it's provided through your healthcare provider in conjunction with your treatment. However, we unfortunately have seen many times where people have participated in the fraudulent use of genetic testing. We've seen many cases where Medicare was charged over $30,000 for one genetic swab, and Medicare will only pay for that test once in a lifetime. So if it was done with a fraudulent or provider, and then in the future, if the Medicare beneficiary needed that real service, it would be denied payment by Medicare because it's already been paid. So that's how that health impact, one example of how the health impact can cause those negative consequences. And lastly, personal financial losses. Medicare numbers are as valuable as Social Security and credit card numbers, and we should guard the Medicare number just as we do guard our Social Security number and credit card numbers. Also, there may be legal consequences for beneficiaries who are complicit in fraud and abuse, such as participating in that type of Medicare fraud is illegal. It causes families, friends, and caregivers in worry and lost work when helping their loved ones recover from falling victim to Medicare fraud. Next slide. I'm not going to go into this entire list of examples of fraud, but I do want to point out the first one, billing for services, supplies, or equipment that were not provided. That's why it's so important to check the Medicare summary notice or explanation of benefits to see what charges have been placed on your Medicare record. And then the one that's next to the bottom, claims for services that are not medically necessary. I want to talk about more of that type of activity in the next slide to demonstrate this type of fraud. So this is a graphic that explains what we saw. It was a huge wave several years ago, and we're seeing it starting to ramp up again with the nationwide brace scam. So who of us has not ever received a robocall and asked, do you have back pain, or do your knees hurt, or any of those types of things? Or possibly you even received, or you've seen a loved one who received randomly received a brace, durable medical equipment, or even diabetic supplies in the mail, and it came unsolicited. You need to think about, did your physician or healthcare provider provide you with a script for that type of item? Did your healthcare provider state that it was medically necessary for that type of item? Did you know that if you ever received a free brace in the mail, your Medicare number was probably fraudulently used to bill Medicare? How would you know if you don't check your Medicare summary notice or explanation of benefit? So again, this graphic shows how the scheme works. So on the left, we have the conspirator, which is the mastermind behind this type of scam. And the mastermind behind the scam will participate in advertising through television, radio, or mailers, encouraging people to give a call to the call center. The call center solicits the Medicare beneficiary for information. I can tell you, I tell people about this type of scam all the time. And last summer, when my mom was having a particularly challenging health event, I was with her. I was in the other room and I heard her talking to someone on the phone. And I heard her giving some answers that I ran into the room and I said, Mama, what are you doing? And she said, well, this person says I can get a free talking glucometer. Don't you think that would be a great idea? And I'm like, Mama, hang up the phone. And it just broke my heart to think that I tell people about this all the time, but my own mother was on the verge of falling victim to this type of call center activity. And as we've heard from the other presenters, these folks are trained in how to build a level of trust so that the person that they're calling, the Medicare beneficiary, will give information. And sometimes when they call, they already have the Medicare beneficiary's number. They already know their address. And that's even scarier because that means that their personal health information has already been compromised. But in this scheme, what happens is that the call center, they give that call and then they're trying to get additional information. The call center will in turn provide that personal health information to a telemedicine company or medical provider who will write a fraudulent prescription regardless of the medical necessity and give it back to the call center. The call center would then sell the fraudulent prescription to the durable medical equipment company to provide a brace. We had one case where the beneficiary received 12 different braces for different parts of the body, and some were duplicate, like back braces. And when they reached out to our SHINE program for assistance, we found that they had charged Medicare $1,000 for each one of those items, and none of them were medically necessary. So just making you aware of these types of scams. So next slide. I know I'm running short on time, so let me race through these things. Again, you will receive links on how to watch these videos that I think are very compelling for all of us to be aware of Medicare fraud. Next slide, please. These are articles about, the first one goes back to that graphic that we saw earlier on the brace scam. And then the last one, I am happy to say that some of the work of our PSA 3 SHINE counselors actually provided information to the Office of Inspector General to build those cases against the fraudsters. And so we're happy to say that some of those folks were caught. So we had a celebration in our place. So next slide. Just want to let you know that unfortunately, waste, fraud, and abuse occur on a daily basis. And I go back to how all of this impacts Medicare as a whole. So next slide. All right, so just want to make you aware of how prevention. Please be very careful about the use of your Medicare card and treat it like a credit card. And we say to be very careful about who you share that information with, and be careful about calls, those unsolicited calls. We're even seeing now where there are, because people tell me, well, I only answer calls from numbers that are in my contacts, but we're seeing how even the scammers are spoofing beneficiaries' doctors' numbers. So when people call, they may think that it's actually the doctor's office calling. So again, be very cautious about who you are sharing information with and what they are directing you to do. When you're looking over your Medicare summary notice or explanation of the benefits, please review those claims and check for possible mistakes or fraud. And then lastly, if you see something unusual, please report it. You can connect with your local SHINE program through 1-800-96-ELDER. Next slide. And then last of all, we can also give presentations on how to read your Medicare summary notice. We'll not go into all of this, but just know that absolutely the SHINE program is here to help with Medicare fraud and abuse. Next slide. And thank you for the opportunity. And we want to encourage everyone to be involved in the protection of the Medicare Trust Fund. Thank you.
So I would like to ask Adam and Cheryl and Wendy and Donna and Ken to come off mute. And we are going to have a question and answer time. Cheryl, that was such great information. And all of our presenters have just scratched the surface of the topics. So we know you have questions, and Maritza, if you would come off mute too, and Maritza is going to help us relay some of the questions. And we have a lot of time for questions, actually, so very good. And we want to entertain and answer all of the questions. I will reiterate what Cheryl said, that you will get a follow-up email with some of the links. We cannot send the PowerPoint presentation, but we will send some handouts and some links so that you can research some additional information on your own and also reach out to any of the presenters. So let's look at our first question, and this would be to Adam or Wendy. Is someone considered impaired simply because they're of a certain age? Let's say someone who is 95. Are they automatically considered impaired or vulnerable because of their age?
I can probably chime in on that a little bit. Maybe Adam and them would be able to do more, but I just had a conversation with a lady yesterday that was 91, full capacity. She knows everything that's going on, but falling for scams. And actually one of her family members called and wanted to know, could we do something about that because of her age? And they actually said they were going to take her to a doctor and try to get somebody to deem her incompetent. But in my opinion, again, I'm not a doctor, I don't think they'll be able to do that because she does know what she's doing. I mean, we've talked to her. So I don't think that age would have anything to do with it, depending on capacity.
Age alone is not
Right.
a reason to consider someone vulnerable.
Right.
Hi, this is Wendy with Department of Children and Families Adult Services. And you are correct. Age is not an automatic qualifier. It used to be 75 and over, but that has since been taken out. And so there's no age requirement.
Thank you, Wendy. Adam had to leave a little bit early, so he may not be able to participate in the Q&A, but Wendy, his colleague, is here with us as well. I always want to make sure people understand that people age differently. So you may have someone who is 60 and very in need and vulnerable. You may have somebody 100 or in their 90s or 100 who is not impaired at all, and everyone ages differently. So age alone is not a factor for vulnerability. There is a comment, this is not a question, but it is a comment that someone reviewed their Medicare summary notice and discovered almost $8,000 of fraud using their Medicare number. And many people never review the notices, and thus the fraud is not specifically known. So we hope whoever this participant is, that they reported this to Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-800-963-5337 or 1-800-96-ELDER. And Cheryl, thank you for reminding everyone to review those notices. Could you tell us maybe one or two things to look for on the notices?
Sure. So the slide that I wasn't able to get to talked about on that Medicare summary notice, you want to look to see the date that the service was charged. So there was a date of service, who was the provider of service, what type of service was provided. So we have what we call healthcare trackers that we give out free to anyone who requests or at our presentations. And we encourage people to keep, it's like a medical diary. So you'll jot down the date you went to the doctor, and there's little check boxes on that healthcare tracker. What was discussed, what type of service was provided, and just different notations. And then you can compare that to your Medicare summary notice or your explanation of benefits to see, was that your provider? Did you go to the doctor that day? Was it actually your provider, in what state? So just some red flags that, and we can also provide that class, but thank you for asking, Patricia.
So for example, if I get charged for going to a healthcare provider in Nevada, and I've never been to Nevada, then that's probably a big red flag. Something like that is what you're saying. Okay, very good. So I'm looking through and I don't see many questions in the chat. We do have plenty of time. So please put your questions in the chat and we will answer as many of them as we can.
Patricia, I saw one where someone in the chat was saying that they've reported Medicare fraud several years ago. A Medicare representative said, it's already been paid, sorry. That's not every customer service representative with Medicare is fully informed. So we encourage people, if that is detected, Medicare fraud is detected, reach out to the Senior Medicare Patrol or SHINE program, and we can work to get that resolved. I know we had one particular case where we knew it was fraud, and when we were submitted all the needed documentation to prove that it was fraud, that came back and said that very thing, it's already been paid, sorry. And that was not acceptable to us. So we escalated that and we were able to get those charges reversed and the monies were recouped. But that takes one interaction. It takes a lot of dedicated work and effort to get those types of issues resolved.
Senior Medicare Patrol and SHINE do such a wonderful job, and often people don't know to report. So we're glad to get that information out. If you have any questions about Medicare, any questions about your Medicare summary notice, calling SHINE, calling Senior Medicare Patrol to ask that question. There may be a simple answer to it, or it may be potential fraud, and reporting that is the best thing you can do.
There is a couple of comments. I don't know if you saw them, Patricia. There's two of them on here. Actually, it looks like it might be for Wendy Fletcher. I mean, it says, I had a client that reported to me that her daughter had been hurting her, and it was reported to Adult Protective Services. They did an investigation, but cleared it when the client recanted. How does that work if the client makes those claims and they tell the investigator that it did not happen? So I think that might be Wendy.
Well,
Wendy, can you answer that one for us?
I can. We encounter that a lot. The elderly are very afraid most of the time, sometimes, of their caregivers, and the threat of them being put in a facility will make them recant. We can always get law enforcement involved, and more than likely we're going to get multiple reports on that, and eventually the victim or vulnerable adult will tell us, something is going on, and at that time we can act. But if they recant and we have no witnesses, and the alleged perpetrator, in this case the daughter, did not tell us that anything happened, unfortunately we would have to close the case. We could always offer services in the home to get an extra set of eyes on the vulnerable adult, maybe through some services through area agency or through home health, to help, see if there is anything going on. But other than that,
Frustrating cases, I'm sure. The next question that I see is for Cheryl. So Cheryl, the physicians that are signing off on all those unnecessary medical devices, Are they actually licensed? And if so, are they being prosecuted?
Yes, so great questions, and thank you for asking that. So they are licensed providers. I get the opportunity to speak to medical students at UF about 3 times a year, and I put on my mama hat and I just tell them, you're working too hard for your medical license to throw it away for fraudulent use. And so are they being prosecuted? We always hope. So that's why we need people to report Medicare fraud. The more we enter those fraudulent cases with the Office of Inspector General, they're tracking how many cases are brought against providers. And if we can show there's a continued misuse of their medical license, then that's when the Office of Inspector General will start an investigation. Unfortunately, there's not enough dollars and time to go after every fraudulent charge, but if we help them by tracking, and if there's a report ongoing, I'll say throughout the state of Florida, that one provider, because many cases that I saw in one of our rural counties was by a provider around Tampa. And we're still trying to build enough cases against that provider to, 1, bring prosecution, and 2, hopefully their medical license would be revoked.
Thank you, Cheryl. Wendy, this question is for you. For APS reporting, if I'm not privy to what capacity or diagnosis that my seniors have, what kind of things can I share that shows that I notice a decline or how behavior is unusual and can be taken seriously? Or also what can be determined as a vulnerable adult in that situation? What kind of things would be considered?
So when you report something, our investigators will contact you, the reporter, unless you specifically request otherwise. And when the investigator contacts the reporter, you can let them know what behaviors you're seeing, what cognitive decline you're seeing, and we can then get in contact with the physician, home health, to verify any of those conditions. The vulnerable adult has to be able to protect themselves, and they have limitations of IADLs or ADLs. So they unable to bathe, unable to use transportation, clean, cook, those kinds of things. But you can, when you make a report, if you have sources, let the hotline counselor know who your sources are and phone numbers, and we will contact them.
And Ken, I think you may want to weigh in on this next question. If I suspect an elder scam in the community, what is the best agency to report to or to start with?
Well, I'll always encourage folks to contact AARP and the Fraud Watch Network to point them to the proper authorities in their locale. But in most regions, as well as most counties, there's a community service officer who is a good point of contact in your local police departments or sheriff's office. But I'll also put into the chat the links to AARP's Fraud Watch Network, because I encourage everyone, if you have a chance, to just explore what's offered in there and use it as a resource in the future when talking to relatives, friends, clients, and others, because it will keep you up to date on the latest happenings as well as ways to protect yourselves.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for putting that information in the chat. I also want to mention that sometimes it depends on what kind of scam it is. If it is a home repair fraud scam or something like that, you may want to involve Department of Business and Professional Regulations. If it is a charities fraud, you may want to involve the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who regulate charities in the state of Florida. So sometimes there may be multiple places to report it to, but the Fraud Watch with AARP is a great place to start and includes a lot of other information. Local law enforcement is always a good option as well. So another question. And Wendy, again, this one is for you. If a person is not impaired but getting exploited, does that mean that APS will not investigate?
No, we will investigate the exploitation, and then we would forward that investigation to law enforcement for arrest and the state attorney's office for prosecution.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
And there's some other comments in the chat. I encourage you to read the chat. And yes, there's a B-Scam Smart flyer that Shine and S&P have, and we will include that in the email that we send out. Okay. And I'm looking at the time, and we have time for a few more questions if anyone does have another question. Donna, this question is for you. I want to kind of go back on something that you mentioned, where the victim can become a criminal. How does that happen?
So whenever we have a conversation with a member, and again, depending on how it's going, you know, I have some members that are like, I have one this week. He's a new member. He's only been with us for about 3 months. The activity on his account, he's receiving, you know, wires and checks from other people that are being deposited into his account. Then he's turning around and taking the funds out and either sending wires or taking out the cash. And found out yesterday he's putting the money into Bitcoin. He's also buying gift cards. And when asking where he's receiving the money from, like he can't tell me the maker of the check that he received, or he'll have to go to his information and documentation to see who he received a $10,000 wire from, right? So he's being used as what's called a money mule. You can look that up. It's basically a money mule. Maybe he's not using his own money, but he is allowing money from other victims to be run through his account. Same thing happens with some of Ken's probably things that he deals with. Again, the money's moving victim to victim, right? It's not just coming in saying, hey, I need to send a wire to you know, Malaysia, or I need to send a wire to Canada for my online boyfriend. It's going to my business partner. It's going to a friend of mine. Yes, I did receive that cashier's check from a friend of mine who owes me money. But again, they're being coached to say those things. They're not being truthful, and they don't realize the money is not coming from their online boyfriend or girlfriend, or, you know, from the sweepstakes guy at Publishers Clearinghouse. It's being laundered one victim to another, different states, different financial institution. It's very hard to track. You can track it, but, you know, a lot of times they'll go, well, go after the person I sent the wire to. They're the ones that received it. But then when they look into it, that person again was an 80-year-old victim who thought they were getting it from somebody that were helping with the sweepstakes, and they took the money out and put it somewhere else. So the scammers are very smart. You know, you got to realize the ones that have capacity, they are willingly participating. And we do, and, you know, I don't say that to every case that I have, but on the ones that I know have been closed at another institution, now they're coming over to Suncoast and starting the same activity. I do caution them. If you leave here and go to another financial institution and continue to participate, you can become a suspect and no longer a victim. It's a basic form of money laundering, right? They're just using their accounts, again, as a money mule, and you can look that up. But that is, and there have been people that have been arrested for that, because they're either getting a kickback from it a little bit sometimes, depending on what it is. You know, yeah, you can keep 200 of the $1,000, but send the rest over here. You know, yeah, I'll let you keep $100, but go buy, you know, $500 in gift cards and scratch the information off the back and give it to me. There's a lot of red flags going on with that. But again, you get some of the members and some people that go, oh, you know, but the money's coming in. Nobody's recalling the money. Nobody's reached out to me. So it's got to be good money. They just don't realize it's coming from other victims that are being manipulated and coerced to send it to them. So basically being used as a money mule.
Thank you, Donna.
Secret Service does have documents that they will make somebody sign that you have been advised that this type of activity of what it is. And if they are caught doing it again, it can be a serious problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a question in the chat for you, Donna, that how do we get the Suncoast newsletter? Could you put the answer to that in the chat so that if there's a link or something where people can sign up, that if you would put that in there?
Yep. So I will, the newsletter that we send out goes out in our mailers. It goes out to 55 and up, members that are 55 and up. And then also, you know, people that don't have an email, that don't use, because we have a lot of seniors that don't use technology, right? They don't use a computer. So we're trying to reach those people also. Let me look into that. I don't know if the newsletter is actually on there yet, because we just actually did a new one. But we do have some flyers on there, and I'll get that information put in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. So I am not seeing any more questions in the chat, but we do have a couple of more minutes. And so I am going to scroll through a couple of more slides. And just to remind you, if you do suspect abuse, neglect, or exploitation, please call the Florida Abuse Hotline at 1-800-96-ABUSE. That's 1-800-962-2873. And it is, as Adam said, staffed 24/7. And these slides are the contact information for the various area agencies on aging that were represented on this call today. Elder Source out of the Jacksonville area, Senior Connection Center out of the Tampa area, the Area Agency on Aging for Southwest Florida out of the Fort Myers area, Alliance for Aging out of the Miami area, Elder Options out of the Gainesville area, and Area Advantage Aging Solutions out of the Tallahassee area. Thank you for attending our workshop today. We are so glad you were here. We hope the information has been helpful. Look out for an email coming with some information, and plan next year for June 15th to participate in World Elder Abuse Awareness Day by wearing purple, the color of respect and dignity, which is how we believe older adults should be treated. And get information, share information with other people to make sure that they have the information they need to protect themselves as well. Thank you again to all of our speakers, Adam, Ken, Donna, and Cheryl, and to Wendy for joining our Q&A, and to all of us who have participated and joined in recognizing this so important day. And thank you again for joining Elder Abuse. It's more than scans.